The views and opinions expressed by the Loft Party Podcast panel participants and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Good Times with Good People company, the host, or its sponsors.
It's not getting in.
Welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Now that you've received your invitation, the best way to let us know that you're in attendance is to download the party or become official by joining us on Facebook, subscribing on YouTube, iTunes Podcasts, or Google Play Podcasts. Good. Thanks for joining us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Share us with your friends, and make yourself at home. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel.
So welcome to the Loft Party Podcast. I'm your host, Rio, and on today's episode 61, this truth must be inconvenient, pulling out of the Paris Accords. Before we get going, we'd like to start with the important things. So, Ben, what are we drinking?
Cocktail of the day is it's a riff on a Ramos Gin Fizz. I call it the Gardener's Gin Fizz. It's made with Rieger gin. So what I do is I muddle up a large disc of cucumber that I dice with rosemary simple syrup, cracked pepper. Then I do a half ounce of lime juice and a couple ounces of Rieger gin, whole ounce of egg white, and just a splash of cream. And I dry shake that. By dry shaking, I mean you shake it without ice. And then you add a little bit of ice after that and shake it cold. And then pour it over a little bit of soda water and let it froth up and get nice and creamy and silky, with a garnish of a fresh strawberry and topped with a rough crack of pepper on top. It is delightful.
And it is delightful. Let's say.
A nice summer scene.
As the gin drinker here, it was delightful.
Hey, and that is what we're drinking. And so the next question, obviously, is, so what are we smoking? And today we are smoking a Arturo Fuente Hemingway. So let me just read this for you. The sublime balance of ultra-thin and toothy Cameroon wrapper pairs exquisitely with Fuente's filler and binder blend, resulting in a complex smacking of orange peel, cedar, and coffee. If you've never smoked an Arturo Fuente Hemingway classic, you're missing out on one of the cigar world's premium smoking experiences. One of the things I will say, not reading, that makes the Hemingway so good, is it is one of the harder shapes to roll, and that is the Perfecto, which basically, for anybody out there in podcast land who is not a cigar smoker, that means that it is torpedoed on both ends. So if you don't know what torpedo means, now go to the Google and look for what torpedo means and what the...
For a cigar.
Yes. Yes. And what the...
It will not sink the ship.
Right.
Make sure you put cigar in the search.
Right, yes.
Otherwise,
yes.
other things may come up.
Other things
You may have Homeland
may come
Security after you.
Other things may come
Amongst other things.
Exactly. And that is what we're smoking. So today's RIPs, there weren't any that I could readily find, any celebrities passing, but I felt that the most important thing, am I wrong?
Allman, was that last week?
Gregg Allman died.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was after our podcast last week.
Let me speak on Gregg real quick. If you don't mind.
Sure.
And so about 1970, they kicked in on the Allman Brothers. And they really formed a Southern style of music that had never been heard before. I can relate so many of their songs to my life, as my wife pointed out the other day, that they really have affected me a lot more with his passing and the thoughts behind and the times of my life and the music that I listen to by him. I'm at an age where all my old rockers are dying.
Yeah,
And you do reflect upon your times when they died, because you did grow up with their musics. And their music's a lot of times reflected where you were in life. And when they play Ramblin', man, my God, that was me. If you don't really sit down and listen to it for a while, you just want to chill, have a smoke, whatever you want to smoke, sit down, kick some Allman Brothers in, and kick back and listen to it, because it is that type of music. They were a jam band. So,
All right.
now we got to get to a little darker subject, don't we?
Yes. And the actual reason for the RIPs this week, I want to, and I'm sure that the rest of the panel wants to send some love and prayers out to the victims of the Manchester concert bombing and of the London terror attacks.
Absolutely.
You know, we kind of touched on the Manchester bombing on the last podcast, and we're just saying that, you know, it's when you have terror attacks, some of them, all of them horrify you, but some of them more than most, especially when it's in situations like, you know, like a concert or just in some really regular place that like really regular people would be
People
at.
walking there every day.
Yeah, you know, or in London where they just sped up and mowed down a bunch of people and then got out and started stabbing people, and just, I mean, like that is terrifying.
Didn't they do that in Times Square recently too? Didn't somebody just go crazy and start driving through Times Square?
Yeah, he was on drugs though.
Yeah, but yeah.
He
Not
was
that
on
was a
PCP.
terrorist.
That was
Yeah,
like
but he
the-
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't now.
He was on PCP. He was on PCP.
Sure.
Yeah, but
Well,
it is the
but
randomness
yeah.
of violence. Yeah.
That was the larger point. It's just when you don't expect it to be in a place where you normally go. This is what we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
Like if you start blowing up grocery stores, well, that might make me nervous to go. To groceries,
Exactly,
but
exactly.
You're just blowing up big things. I'm like, okay, I just want to go to big things. You know?
Yeah.
I probably still would go. Actually.
Well, I think the thing that made it the toughest about Manchester is that Arianna Grande is going to attract the teeny boppers, the preteens.
Oh yeah.
So you got a lot of these 13, 14-year-old girls out there, and this guy walks up to them and blows them up.
Yeah.
You know, I think this thing that people are having trouble recognizing is they want to. These guys really think they're soldiers in jihad. They think they're soldiers.
Well, the other problem is they don't even care. I mean, they're willing to kill their own children
they don't
and their
care.
own women, you know, for their cause. So they could care less that it was all they thought about was the fact that it was a mass amount of people.
And it would
they
make a
could
big
inflict
stake.
a
But then-
mass amount of
I'll
damage.
say as a dude,
But I don't think
I want them
governments.
to care about blowing me up too. I get
But I'm
the
just
children,
saying,
but I don't want
they
I don't want to be
care.
blowing up either.
You know,
right?
you made the point last week too that it doesn't. It's worse to us because we have this thing about hurting the innocent or children or whatever.
Right.
You know, they don't care. They don't see children. It's
No, they don't
collateral
see life.
damage.
They don't.
Well-
They have issues with life itself.
I think that that's a little bit of an overgeneralization in the sense that I think in this situation, the motivation behind it is driven also by the influence of mental illness. They take people who they can influence who have a mental illness and radicalize them.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think it's mental illness. It might
And that
be.
they're not people just born into poverty and swayed into
Yes,
it for the family.
they're
And
not highly
in fact,
educated.
In fact, a lot of them are very highly educated. You'd be
What people
stunned
who
by the number.
perpetuate these acts or the people who influence people?
The people who do the acts, you would find that a lot of them are college graduates that
Really?
have been radicalized. And
Yeah.
But does
you'd
being,
be
but
stunned
does being a
at,
college graduate,
you'd be stunned at the economic and educational level of a lot of the people who perform these acts.
but then your contention would be that somebody who has a college, graduate degree isn't susceptible to mental illness.
No,
I don't
that's
think
not.
that's necessarily the
That's
case.
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that mental illness aside, the common belief would be that it's a lot of poor people in these shit-ass countries.
Yeah,
who
no, I don't think
are
that.
going around and blowing people up.
Yeah.
It's the same way that most people think
Poverty and
people in the
stupidity
army
does
are
not
dumber than normal Americans.
Right.
Like it's a bunch of hicks from the sticks. To be honest, when every study has shown that
Well,
actually.
as a veteran myself, I can tell you that that's not the
And
case.
it's not the case at all. So every study would tell you that actually
But they always try to
the
push
average
along.
military person is
Well,
better
yeah, they do,
educated and
because
higher,
they're
from a higher
decent.
company.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we can go on this all day, but before we get too deep, let's play a quick party game. So, if there was a box that contained the truth about God and religion, would you open it?
Who are you starting with?
Well, Ben was ready to jump right in. So.
Absolutely.
So you would definitely want to know the mysteries of the universe in that way.
I always want to know the mysteries of the universe. I always want to have factual information in which I can, base how I wish to live my life around. Whether the truth is that I was wrong all along, or everything that I possibly ever knew to be turned upside down. That would only shape me to be a better person, because then I have an understanding about what we're here for, which is what everybody wants to know in the first place. That's what we're here to do. That's the.
I can understand your reasoning. Personally, I have, from the moment I saw this question and then typed it out, I've been wrestling with would I open that box, and I don't have an answer actually. Some things for me, being a person that grew up in the church, some things for me are meant to be in God's domain, and I don't know if I'm meant to understand. Would I want to understand? Yes, but I don't know if I would open that box. I can't say that I'm sure I would.
You're right there.
Yeah,
you have the literal option, consequence-free, I'm assuming, by the question.
Yeah. The assumption is, you won't get struck down by lightning if you open the box.
Right.
It's kind of an Adam and Eve question,
Sure.
There's if you think about it just allegorically, going to the story, there's a tree that gives you all knowledge. If you eat from it, do you eat from it or do you not?
Right.
And then sometimes you find out that the truth that you discover is pretty crappy. But
I
would open it in a second. I'm with you, because right now I don't have any faith. I've been a person without faith.
To be honest,
for a very long time.
I think
You're not a person without
mechanism.
faith. You don't believe in religion.
I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of that. So if there was a box that said you're right or you're wrong, I would have lived with it, because I can't lose either way.
So you definitely would consider yourself an agnostic.
More than agnostic, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So I believe,
which just means, out there for anybody in podcast land who doesn't know, it really just means you don't know if you believe in God or not. You are heavily questioning.
I just believe morality exists outside of religion, and so I wouldn't lose either way. I don't think opening the box is anything. If all of a sudden it turns out there is God and religion, well then great. Then then I'll try to adopt God and religion and go, this is awesome. But I don't think it would change my lifestyle or my behavior or any of the other things necessarily. I'd just be like, okay.
Now that is true. I don't think I would behave differently, because I try to treat people fairly. I try to treat, and all of that.
That depends.
It would, because what I was originally going to say is, I don't think I'd be a different person, but I don't think that's a true statement. I think by the virtue of the fact that you open the box, you will be a different person.
Yeah, you get changed by something heavy.
That heavy, that profound.
Yeah.
Because you got to realize, I got to look in the box. I fell 24 feet. I saw a light. I looked into a box. I got to crack open the lid and look into the box. It does change you. You bet.
I believe it would.
People look at me when I tell them I fell 24 feet and it was the most peaceful moment of my life, like I'm a crazy man.
You know what's funny?
Which I probably am a little bit. But
you know what's funny? I was listening. I saw this thing online.
It's something you can't explain.
Yeah, I saw this thing online with Will Smith, and he was talking about getting agreeing to skydive, and how like you agreed to skydive, and now you're like for 2 days you can't sleep. You're like what the hell did I do? Why did I agree to this?
Jumped out of a
you're fully and you were fully in fear of what's going to happen and the whole thing. He says, but the moment you step out of the plane
No, he said they push you.
Yeah, he said they count They count to 3.
Said,
they push you on 2 because people grab on 3. Right. He said, but the moment you're out of the plane, he said it is the most blissful experience because you realize there was nothing to be afraid of, and you just are free in that moment.
He's talking about being scared while you're laying in bed. Why were you scared laying in bed? You were still safe, and even when they open the door of the plane, you're still safe. Yeah. But you're afraid, and it's getting past
you're afraid of possibilities.
Getting through the fear.
His message was getting past the fear because fear is what causes failure.
And I don't have a lot of fear, and I think that's maybe why I don't have that issue. I think I told you before, I was on a plane that was going to crash land and all that, and it was just...
Oh, yeah. I do remember the story.
It wasn't scary at all. It was just really weird. And I just kept looking around going, this is the weirdest thing. I just think, I don't know when I'm going to die. It's going to be any time. It could be now. It could be leaving here. It could be 20 years from now. But I can't control that, so it's fun to do things that are just, interesting. It'd be fun to know.
What about you, anonymous female? Would you open the box?
What's in the box? That's a hard question for me because most of religion and God, it's all based on your faith that it really exists and that what you've been taught or seen or whatever, is. It is. That's why they call it faith, and I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a very analytical person, and I like having the answers, but it is once you know, you can't unknow it ever, and it will change who you are at your core. Knowing it. It would be though.
She said it was the word you used, faith. That's the faith. Mm-hmm. That is an awesome. That is really
I don't think it will make you not have
well
faith.
By saying that.
But I think it would change possibly
There's no way
the
for
purpose
it not
you feel.
to. There's no way for it not to. Whether in a positive or negative way, you're going to look at everything differently.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, I knew this was right, and everything I'm telling you is absolutely right, and I saw inside the box, I know. Or it's the other way of, I can't believe I've been fed this my whole life and it's not true. Whatever direction it is, you're going to change your way of thinking. Just naturally.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a reality of peeking in the box.
The interesting thing about it would be, because you did bring up faith, so in my mind, if you're a person of faith and you open the box, it diminishes your faith because now you know, and so now you're not. It would take away the faith aspect to me. So that would be
possibly be exactly what you thought.
Well, even at that, the whole issue of faith is okay. I'm believing this because I really want to, and I'm devoting myself to it. And now I know. Well, knowing is easier than not knowing. And so you're doing some more of an act of bravery in some way to have faith without knowing. But for me, what I would not want is open the box and all of a sudden have a shit ton of rules in there, and I'm like,
you open the box and the 10 Commandments are in the box.
It was like a PDF.
I'm cool with knowing if there's God or not. That would be fine by me.
Yeah.
But I still don't think that answers the questions of basic morality to me. I try to be reasonably moral.
That's good.
But,
10 Commandments are in the box.
I don't know.
I think we look at it the same way, in just coming at it from different directions.
Angles,
Because for me, I truly don't think I would want to know, because I'm okay with the way my faith is.
Yeah.
Here, I also have another interesting premise is, what if you find out if whoever created us or whatever we were modeled after actually have a finite lifespan? Like, whoever visited us and injected our DNA into the evolutionary system of Earth, maybe they live like 30,000 years. Or something like that,
the Prometheus theory.
Yeah.
All right.
That wouldn't bother me at all because I already have a finite lifespan. So it won't affect me.
Yeah.
That's cool. Whatever it
More
is.
like a little
Mine's much shorter.
right. I'm not going to live 30,000 years. So
Actually, I was going to mention Prometheus because I did watch it last night, and I was like,
Yeah, the idea of Prometheus.
And then who created
there was a
it,
race.
and
seeding.
If
seeding
you
race.
haven't watched it, you might want to.
Yeah, it's actually it's a prequel to the Alien series, but the idea that there was an alien race that seeded Earth with life is actually really interesting. But anyway, with all that said, we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey, you can search for the Loft Party Podcast on iTunes Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and on our Good Times with Good People YouTube channel. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, tweet us on Twitter, and if you like the content we provide, donate to us on Patreon. www.patreon.com/Loft Party Podcast. You can find all of our links below. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
All right, welcome back to the party. Okay, here we go. Party politics. Pulling out of the Paris Accords. So I came up with two basic questions, and there definitely may be more. But first, pulling out of the Paris Accords, and of course, for anybody out there in podcast land, the Paris Accords was literally every country in the world other than two. Now three.
Well, there's more than that. 196 approved it, but only 146 have ratified it, and they had until April 1st to do it. So it's more than that.
So, with that,
I did do my research.
good. No, that's good. America pulling out of the Paris climate change accords. I guess the first question is, how do we look to ourselves? When I do think that there is probably a majority of the country that does believe that climate change is real. What are we thinking of ourselves pulling out? I think there's two questions. One, what do we think of ourselves, and then what does the rest of the world think of us? But before the second question, like what are we thinking about it? What are we thinking of ourselves as a nation pulling out of?
I think most people are upset by that. I mean, who live here think that there's no real good reason to not be a part of it. It's not a binding agreement or anything. It's just a pledge to try to do the right thing and to move in the right direction as far as taking care of our planet. And there's no reason strategically, monetarily, or environmentally to not move in that direction. So why would we do that other than just trying to make some kind of statement?
Well,
Posturing. And I think Dave's got an article here that is.
I've got an article here, and it's kind of interesting. So,
by the way, who published this article? I just need to know that before we start.
This came from the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank. Okay. I'll get that right off the bat. Thank you. The main problem with the Paris Accord, or the Pittsburgh Accord, is that it kind of put us on the spot right off the bat. It was costly and ineffective for the United States. It is a voluntary, and this is one thing that's kind of interesting. This is a voluntary accord, a treaty, that was laid out there. The United States has to come up with most of the money off the bat. And that's just a plain fact. It really was going to turn around, and if we had to follow into what the accord was, we were going to lose thousands of jobs, and we were going to have to give billions of dollars.
Well, wait a second.
The problem.
How much did the accord ask for? In total.
The total was it was going to destroy us according to this article.
No, without that. What did the accord ask for in terms of dollars?
Well, they already sent in over $1 billion.
So they asked for $100 billion total,
Yep.
of which we pledged 3
Yep.
under Obama. That's it.
Yep.
So we contribute 15% of all of the pollution to the world as a single country,
Right.
and we're giving $3 billion of the $100 billion. So that's a drop in the bucket to
Well,
us.
true.
here.
At
That's
this
nothing.
point. At this point.
And you're saying it's gonna
During the
go up.
meantime, China and India, who are the worst polluters. My point is this, and I know pollution is a big deal with you. It's probably your main deal, and I understand this. But I also will go back to our Clean Air and Water Act. We have cleaned ourselves up a lot. I mean, look at it. We got unleaded gas now. We got catalytic converters. Our coal plants have scrubbers on them. Almost every coal plant around here that is still functioning, Lacine and the one up on the river, I can't think, ITAC, and even down here at off Front Street.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them have built new scrubbing towers that scrub a lot of this stuff out. They're producing a lot cleaner coal energy.
And now they don't have to.
And then this is
share
happening.
gas
And you can
so
go
they're dumping rivers again.
during my travels. I see a lot of these places where this is what they put in. So they are working on this. As a country, I really believe that our technology will allow America to produce cleaner and cleaner air. We produce cleaner and cleaner waters. We're not perfect. We never will be perfect.
You do
no other
realize-
country will be perfect.
I'm
No
not-
other country can reduce their major
It's not about
carbon
perfection.
footprint.
But you do
totally.
realize that they are actually scaling back on EPA at the same
Well,
time.
they need to because they've gotten
They
crazy.
reversed
But
the
you
rules
can't
on coal
have
mining.
both. You can't say, well, you
Which-
can.
Which
but
actually,
there's-
one second. That actually goes to the point that we were actually talking about off air about. We were still talking about the religion question, and off air, Chris was saying that in any argument, you can either one be right, one be wrong, or you're both wrong. So to me, that actually feeds right into that. So you can't be, one of the leading countries in cleaning up the environment, but at the same time start shutting down EPA programs that allow people to dump back in rivers. That just doesn't compute as.
But is it that, or is it that the EPA, like any government program, has become so largest that it needs to be scaled back in its overall regulation of everything? For example, I'll give you a quick little thing on like lead abatement. All right, lead abatement's a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing, because there's a lot of areas that do have lead abatement. I'm trained in lead abatement, all right? Some of my former trained in lead abatement. There was hardly any paint that had lead in it, really past 1960. It was, before 1960, you'll see a lot of it. But 1978 is their cutoff line. And so we have to go through and test these houses and everything else before then. It's just, you have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time. You get fined very heavily if you don't do the proper lead abatement. And it was just, the how they had it set up did not work for the contractor in any kind of way. You're going to lose in any kind of way you approached it. So I've just observed this through my business sometimes, is that they take what should be here. We do it with our codes too. They take what should be here and they go here with it. And it costs money. And that's kind of what the EPA has done in a lot of things. But let's go back to where they polluted the river. If that had been a corporation, you'd still be hearing about how they're suing their asses, and then the EPA says, "Whoop whoop, made a mistake, busted the dam down."
They're getting ready to do that.
Out of curiosity,
I just have problems with this.
Yeah, out of curiosity,
It needs to be scaled back.
we were talking earlier, and I was feeling that Do you remember what country that was saying that they didn't understand how America does things because, you know...
like being patriotic?
Yeah, like, because they in order to do the right thing, they will tax themselves.
Germany.
To make sure.
Germany. It was a German guy who tweeted. He said, essentially that, what was it? Being patriotic is just showing how nationalistic you are and beating the drum.
Who was that, Germany?
Yeah, and then he...
No, they were saying...
a German person.
was saying America's version of patriotic is putting a full-size flag on a truck or, something like that.
Oh, I think that's a bad statement.
Well, the rest of it was in order to do the right thing, in order to
I'll see if I can
actually clean the environment or whatever, they will do the thing that may be hardest for America to do for itself, which is they'll tax themselves to make sure that there's money there to do this thing. Like if we're serious about wanting to clean up the air, or clean up the rivers, or whatever,
This particular
it does take money.
More about taking care of sick people, actually.
But I think that thread carries through. It carries through.
No, I understand.
Like I don't understand how we can. And don't get me wrong, nobody wants to be overly taxed. But if that something is important to do, and it's difficult to do, and it's gonna take money to do. We can't. But it's.
Do you want me to read it?
Oh, yeah, wait. Let me finish the statement and then read it. To me, if you know it's hard, you know it's difficult, you know it's expensive. We can't say, okay, government, you're too big, so we need to scale you back. But we still want you to do all these things. It's like, it's at a certain point, if you know the money needs to be there, we as citizens, to me, still have to make the sacrifice of allowing ourselves to be taxed to accomplish certain goals. Like, no, nobody wants to be taxed 40-50% of their income, but there's got to be a middle ground somewhere that I don't know if every American wants to let happen. But before we get to, Ben wants to say something, but before we get to that, the anonymous female asked.
So it was a question. It was, why aren't Germans patriotic? And this gentleman who is German, I'm not even going to butcher his name by trying to pronounce it. It says Germans are patriotic. In America, you show patriotism by attaching a full-size U.S. flag to your pickup truck or a Confederate flag for alternative patriotism, singing the national anthem before every baseball game, and sending 18-year-olds to Iraq so you can later thank them for their service when they roll by you in a wheelchair in Walmart. In Germany, we show patriotism by voting for higher taxes on ourselves and to make health care and college tuition universally accessible to our less fortunate fellow citizens, and by picking up after one another to keep public spaces clean and nice for everyone. I guess it gets lost in translation.
He's basically, totally liberal in his views.
Well, he's German. I mean,
he's not going to rep.
Tough place to speak.
And I'll ask this German gentleman: has he lived here? Has he really gone out? Has he gone out and met American people?
If he lives in America or not. I mean, nobody. That doesn't say.
Yes,
it just
but
says he's
my
German.
point being is that
he doesn't
completely agree with.
Anyway, I need to let Ben go before I take off.
Yeah.
I think but wait though, we're going down a different rabbit hole. I think the point of this was, it's the way that other countries see us.
Well, that's the second part of the question. The question we're on right now is how we see ourselves.
But on Dave's point, you were discussing the lead abatement stuff where after 1960 lead wasn't a problem, which by the way took a long time to happen. lead was poisoning our communities and causing all kinds of problems
Oh,
with
yes.
mental
It
health.
still is.
Absolutely.
It still
Absolutely.
is.
So-
I don't disagree.
So, like I said, it was making it hard for contractors. So, I guess in this sense, like if we could allocate our tax dollars better to make that program easier for the contractors, to have not you doing things needlessly to handle a lead problem that could potentially happen, or any other
We actually
environmental
achieved
problem.
that through the National Home Builders Association, through our lobbying efforts to be able to back them off a little bit so that they weren't so heavy-handed with this.
Well, whenever you say scale back and back them off and stuff like that, what it sounds like to everybody else is we don't want to do it and we don't want to deal with it.
No,
What it,
but
what
we
it
still
should be
do it.
is a simplified solution that's effective.
If you're going to fine me $30,000 a day, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I would just say this is analogous to the health insurance industry, where for years they could have taken steps on their own to get rid of many of the problems in our insurance system, and they decided not to until they were faced with the threat of national health care. And then they go, oh, you know what? We're actually pretty cool. Let's let you have some pre-existing conditions and stay on your parents' insurance a little longer, and common sense things.
Yeah.
So it is the threat of regulation that makes most companies, especially since you're talking about publicly traded companies, you need a quarterly report, annual, that sounded stupid, but increases quarterly to their investors and things along those lines. This is a matter of money. You think that they're all of a sudden going to voluntarily start doing the right thing and just going, okay, let's not dump in the river because that's super cheap. Let's do it the hard way and just, make less money. But no, that really bothers me. Government has a role, and again, it's funny that we started off the show with a religious question, because I would believe, and I'm not religious.
And that was purposeful, actually.
We're talking
It's
about
funny.
altruism.
If you look at the religious side of things, you would have to say God gave us one thing, and that is a planet to take care of. And we are massively abusing the resources at this point. And so that would, if I was religious, would supersede any economic argument that somebody could make to me, only because you get one chance to screw this planet up. And so this has always been my biggest thing. Always.
But in the board by one main thing, population.
Yeah.
What about it?
Population. We are constantly growing in our population of the planet. So we are constantly overburdening the planet due primary to our population.
No, we're not.
The population, more
we're
people you have, the
overburdening our
more
waste.
energy they require. The more energy they require. Because everybody wants to have electricity, and we want every uncivilized nation to become civilized. I mean, that's the American way. We're supposed to put this on them. But if you go to third world countries, you find a whole bunch of places that don't have power and have these different things. But population drives energy, it drives food, it drives everything. It's population.
And I'd make an argument with you that there was a very famous philosopher, British philosopher, Malthus, and there was a whole school of Malthusian economics where the entire world was...
Wait, say that one more time, just for the people out there in podcast land. So that sounded really intelligent.
So if you want to look it up, look up Malthusian economics. He predicted the world would be dead based on food supplies by, I believe it was somewhere in the 1950s. It was certainly in the mid-20th century. We should have all been dead by now. And what's happened is it didn't account for advances in technology and all those other things. But what I would argue is that a government is a major driver in advancing technologies, because you say, I know that you do it this way now and it's cheap and easy. You can't keep doing it this way because you are killing us. Mm-hmm. So you need to figure out a way. This is where genetically modified food comes from. This is where all these other things. The same acre of land can produce exponentially more food than it could at the time that he was writing. So, but a lot of that came about not just through crazy corporations doing stuff. It came about through government regulations. Is you can't keep doing this. You can't keep dumping. I guarantee you, in Pittsburgh, if you hadn't had regulatory changes, they'd still be dumping crap in the river and killing people there. You want to talk about a Pittsburgh court? That's a Pittsburgh court. That was a disgusting city up until the late 70s. It was just absolutely foul. Government regulations, they've cleaned it up to where it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
But all these rivers have gotten a lot cleaner. We have made a lot of
regulation.
progress because
But yeah, that's why.
Because there were some
they are
regulations. The Clean Air and Water Act, I said from the beginning, was the best act of Congress that probably was ever
But
But
passed.
that's part of what they're trying to get rid of with scaling back the
Right.
EPA.
And I'm
I
arguing
don't
why
think
people
so. I
do
think
That-
Clean Air
but
and
they've
Water Act is
said
still in
that.
play. It has not been rescinded.
Portions of it definitely have. Again, as a coal producer, you are now free to dump into rivers again, which is completely wrong. That is disgusting. You will kill people, and you will cause all kinds of harm to individuals. That has an adverse effect then on, guess what? They're going to be sick. They're going to the insurance.
Well,
rates will
and
be
not
jacked
only
up
that,
again.
you're messing
And
with
it's
the
a whole cycle,
ecosystem.
and I agree. And you get to do it one time.
Yeah.
As soon as you screw up the land once, it's done. It's
Well,
done.
you know, it's funny.
You can't go back.
You know, it's
Not a
funny.
do-over.
Like I said, I picked the party game question for one reason, is it really did tie into the Paris Climate Change Accords, because when God created Adam and Eve, if you are religious, he says, I give you dominion and stewardship over the land and all of the animals on it. And so for the how are we looking at ourselves question, it's, to me, it's really simple. It's if not, to tell you the truth, you're religious, it's that stewardship. Are we doing a good job? And if we're still dumping in rivers and we're still smoke stacking massive amounts of coal dust and everything else into the air, we couldn't possibly be good stewards of it.
Well, what do we want the EPA as a government, any government agency, the EPA in particular, to be able to function at its ultimate level?
Well, now I do agree. I do agree
That's
that.
kind of where I'm at.
Well, I do agree that no matter what the organization is or what the government agency is, there's always going to be room for improvement. But do I think that rolling back, the regulations and allowing coal companies to dump in rivers again, I don't think that's.
I wouldn't want a coal company to dump in the river again.
Yeah, but I guess the problem is,
it isn't really going to happen.
But I don't think that you do want that. But the problem is, I think, is what Chris was saying before we move to the second question in this. I think what Chris was saying is definitely the problem. When money is the issue, corporations. Now the funny thing is, the definition of a corporation and the definition of a psychopath are actually very eerily, scarily similar. You do whatever is necessary to survive yourself, including cannibalizing yourself. That in and of itself is scary, because if that is the corporate groupthink of all major corporations,
which is why they get tight with government
which is also
they
the
are
problem.
intertwined with government just as much as government intertwines with them.
And that is not to say that that's a good either. I guess what I'm saying is, government does play a role, because if you leave it up to the people making money, and because look, in any corporate structure, it works like this: you make more money, or you reduce your costs so that you make more money. So either you find a way to make more money, which a lot of these industries are dying, that we're talking about, coal and stuff like that. So you're not going to find too many more ways to make more money, or you cut your costs. And if there's a regulation that says you can't dump into the rivers, or you can't, smokestack into the air without scrubbing or whatever, but then that regulation is taken away, I don't have any faith in corporations that they won't make more money.
But they
won't revert to the cheapest.
But then also, corporations and oil companies and a lot of the energy companies will also come up with new technologies.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's not true.
They employ a lot of people to do this, and I think if somebody came up with a better energy form and had the time to put the infrastructure in place in order to replace what we have now, a super fuel, a better way to produce electricity that was actually able to function to where it wasn't going to cost the common taxpayer or the common person in America 10 times what they're paying now, because they ain't going to go for that. Then people will adapt to it.
Well, let me throw something out, and this is where I would disagree, because I think that the established companies that are already out there that have a vested interest and already have the money have no incentive at all to support those technologies because they're protecting their own interests. So, and I think
they can make money off the oil and gas and
we
coal,
right
yeah.
now can desalinate water if we wanted to and run cars off of it. It's already been proven that we can. We could run it. We already have
natural gas.
Again, maybe, but I also think you could do
said
it
that
other
a long
ways
time
that
ago.
are renewable. That could stay. Like, for example, I admire Elon Musk for what he's doing with Tesla. I think that's a great model of a thing to do. Now, if you want to get behind that, great. It takes a disruptor to do that, but do you know how much he fights every single state? Silly stuff like that. Like, they won't even let him sell cars directly to people. He has to go through these bizarre distributorships in each state, and some of them prevent that, and all this other stuff. I mean, it's just nonsense. But if you want to talk about the rules being stupid, that's a stupid one. We have better energy sources. We have no inducement right now to make states or the federal government or these huge corporate lobbies, like you were saying, support those, because it's not.
I totally disagree with you.
It's not inexpensive for them to put that stuff into place.
I've been boggled after working in the oil field and working mostly in natural gas, why we don't have our entire truck fleet working on natural gas right now. We should have had years ago, we should have had natural gas. It costs $1,500 or so to convert a diesel motor to where it can take on natural gas and run it.
Shouldn't be boggled by that. It's because
it's cheaper.
It's a vested interest. If you're
It's
Shell,
cheaper,
which is the
it's
largest
cleaner.
company, the largest company by market cap in the world is Shell.
Yes.
What's their inducement to do that? Nothing. What's their inducement to?
We have
support
100
electric cars?
years of natural
Nothing.
gas out
What's
there.
their-
We'd be running these vehicles on right effing now.
except
Except
they
that we
don't
have better
need to do
options
that.
already.
What, too, because they're making so much money off the
And
present
we already
system.
have better options than natural gas.
And
Yes.
and
I
here's
mean, that's what's so funny to me.
well, here's the other part. What they're going to do, everything as far as our road repairs go and our infrastructure go is based on what? Gas tax.
Sure.
So the more energy efficient we become, the less tax money they can bring in, right?
But do you know how much the expenses
do
go
the
down?
tax?
But that you will have to redo the tax. How long have they been trying to redo the tax in the state of Missouri? Because
Who do you
they
think's fighting
passed the
against that?
tax back in the 90s, and they turned around and threw it in the slush fund and didn't use it on the roads.
I think
now
we-
nobody in the state of Missouri will trust the sorry bastards.
I think we use technologies that are abusive that cause these costs. And so you're assuming that there wouldn't be any slashing costs if we started picking different technologies. And I would argue there'd be a major slashing cost if we started picking different technologies and using different things. It'd be humongous. And we're not even looking into that. We let corporations squash it at every turn because they have humongous lobbies that it's in their worst interest to let
because
these
they're
go.
tied in with the
And
government.
And so when you argue that new technology is going to take over, no, new technology needs to be fostered and supported. And we do not do that as a country because the existing companies that have the dollars prevent that.
But part of the argument is that you want the government, I know we need to move on, we got the government, we're saying here we want the government to regulate us and take care of us, but on the other hand, the corporations are so tied in with the government that the government is also going to work towards that.
You know that I am so anti-government, it is ridiculous. I do not like government.
I don't trust.
I think
I
their
don't
sole
trust either
function
one.
is under life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you can leave it at those three. And to me, this falls under life and happiness.
Right.
I'm like, I do not want to see this world destroyed. That is going to absolutely affect my life 1,000,000%. It's going to cause all kinds of illnesses, all kinds of things that we don't know about right now. And it's like, and again, I'll give you a great example. It's similar to what I think a lot of democratic programs are. They're designed to help people with unintentionally horrific consequences.
Yes.
So I do not think that dumping into a coal river ever in anybody's idea in mind is a great idea.
I think that's insane.
So I would agree.
I would never go for that either.
Let's not have that. Let's actually support clean air, clean technology, and let's get behind it and make it happen. Because if we're really the country we say we are, which leads to the second question, which is how do we want to be seen in the world, then let's be leaders in clean technology.
Okay.
And not fight it at every turn.
Yeah, with that,
Which we are.
we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come right back.
Hey out there in podcast land, we would not be doing our duty if we didn't acknowledge the sponsors of the Loft Party Podcast, the Majestic Restaurant and Jazz Club, and the Majestic's Pendergast Club. The Majestic carries on Kansas City's tradition of great food and jazz. Let them show you why they are the classic Kansas City steakhouse experience. 931 Broadway, just 3 blocks from the Kansas City Convention Center. J. Rieger and Company, a Kansas City distillery. Whether whiskey, gin, or vodka, neat or on the rocks, J. Rieger, Kansas City, sipping good since 1887. C&P Construction, Kansas City's premier wood framers, 50 years of quality framing and craftsmanship. Just email david.cnpservice@gmail.com and start building something new today. And our friend and frequent guest, Lane Boland. Thank you all for all that you do. Time to rejoin the conversation.
Okay, so we're back, and we are still talking party politics. And the question on the table is, with America pulling out of the Paris Accords, we've discussed what we look like to ourselves, but what do we look like around the world? So our current president seems to be of the opinion that the world was laughing at us. And that was kind of one of his major reasons for wanting to pull out of the Paris Accords. But I guess my question is, when and where were they laughing at us? And aren't they, if not laughing at us, aren't they at least shaking their heads at us now, wondering what the fuck?
I would say laughing almost ironically, like they're laughing like, what?
Yeah.
Like in a way, whenever something really bad happens to you,
Yeah.
and you laugh at it because you don't really have another response.
Yeah.
Well, let me concede this point today, because I think this is an important point. I think the way that they were laughing at us is that we stand to lose a ton of jobs to other countries who may or may not comply with the accord. So yeah, we did pull out of the deal, but that doesn't mean the other countries are necessarily complying with it. And so our manufacturers and our people are going over there to do work, and that kind of stuff. So that could be one area where people are laughing at us. But what I would say is, listen, anytime you one of the consequences is we don't even get a voice in the UN Climate Accord for 4 years. That's one of the penalties of pulling out of the deal.
Yeah, by the way, 4 years later, so if another president gets elected, Donald Trump will, still have a voice in that, right?
No, he wouldn't, because it would be hopefully
after January. Okay,
yeah, it'd be the new administration.
You're right.
Yeah, so but we're shut out for 4 years dealing with this issue.
So his entire first term.
So he just completely gave up our voice entirely
Yeah.
on this issue, and I just think that's ridiculous.
Which even if he came along with it, like, we don't lose anything by him saying, all right, well, I'll come along, but I have my reservations or whatever. Sure.
It's funny to me, like, listen, I get that we probably will lose some jobs, and I know some of them will go overseas and that kind of stuff, but at some
That's
point,
happening anyway.
when you're the world leader in something, and nobody wants to be Rome, you don't want to see your country collapse, you know, and lose status and all those other things, but at the same time, you have an obligation to kind of lead the way.
Yeah.
You know, and we have abdicated our seat at a table to lead the way, and that when we're 15% of the global problem, and you can make an argument that China's worse, but historically the United States is the worst if you take it all together by a mile and a half. It's not even close at this point. You know, we can't abdicate that responsibility, and that's what he did, is he abdicated the responsibility.
Well, let me read something from an article here. It's kind of interesting. There's nothing about leaving the Paris that prevents Americans from continuing to invest in new energy technologies. It kind of goes against what you're saying. The market for energy is $6 trillion, projected to grow a third by 2040. Roughly 1.3 billion people do not have access to electricity, let alone reliable, affordable energy. That's a big market incentive for the private sector to pursue the next energy technology without the aid of taxpayer money. Now you think about that. That's a shitload of money. So if American companies work to find a way to get the 1.3 billion people out there that don't have access to, and it could be, building a coal plant in the middle of Africa could be a difficult problem. But you can certainly set up solar panels or wind power or other type of technologies out there to try to bring some of these people that technology. That a lot of times is led by American companies. And that's something that is still out there that American companies are doing on a private level. So I tend to say, yeah, maybe they're laughing at us, but maybe we might surprise them in the long run with what we can develop. We have a lot of brilliant people in here. I look at a lot of the Indians, and I see them in our companies and how brilliant these guys are and gals. And these people come up with things. People will come up with something to solve some problems. We always seem to be resilient people. And we do manage to sometimes come up with solutions to solve problems that are good for the overall environment and good for the world.
I can agree with that. But that then brings me to my next question, which is, if that's the case, and I do think that probably is the case, why was it necessary to pull out then? If we're going to be the ones who find the technology and we are the ones who are going to create the innovation, why was it necessary to pull out in the first place?
Well, I think it has to do with wealth distribution. I mean, you got to realize there's a lot of countries in here that are run by despots, and the money will go to them, and as usual, they won't do jack shit with us. They'll put it in their pockets. We've been supplementing how many countries with foreign aid for different things. How much of that money actually went to good or went in somebody's pocket? You can't be ignorant to that fact. Dictators are dictators for a reason. And they do pocket a lot of that money and create their own wealth and their own elite class, and their people continue to suffer. So, that's where I think a lot of people that I've talked to had a problem with the Paris Accord, is that it was us shelling out dollars and not knowing exactly where those dollars were going and what those dollars were going to do. So it kind of put us on the forefront where we had to do that, where China and India had 20 years before they even really had to start put up or shut up. And it was a voluntary, this is the main thing, this is a voluntary thing. So it wasn't.
We were 5 years ahead of them. We were 2025. They were 2030.
But it's still, what if we turned around and shelled out $1 trillion and China went, son of a bitch, they just shelled out $1 trillion, I'm out of this.
Also on that,
They could
So we only do
they could
what
back out. There was
everybody-
no binding agreement here in this court. This was not a well done deal, in my opinion. This was not a well done deal. If you want it has to be binding. If you want to really go after it, it can't be voluntary. It has to be binding. It has to be a treaty, which has to be ratified by our Congress and our Senate. Then it has to be the real deal, and everybody has to have skin in the game. And I don't think that this is a good accord in that aspect. And I've read heavily on this, and I don't think it's the way it needs to be. And I don't blame him. Now, let's not forget, Trump said, I'm willing to renegotiate.
He gave up that right.
So I don't know with Trump, you never know what the talk is and what the action is, right?
Well, I guess like Chris was saying, I think the problem is that, which is the reason that I say why pull out is because, so for the next 4 years, there is no renegotiating. There's no nothing. We're out.
We're out.
And so, to me, if you're looking at the deal and you're saying, okay, this needs to be, hammered down further, to me, you don't pull out and lose
Walk
4
away.
years.
Yeah.
You say, okay, the way that this is set up currently, we need to renegotiate what we're all doing here, and but when you pull out, you lose the opportunity to be at that negotiating table, and I don't think with something as important as global climate change, we should have pulled out. I do think if it's just like with our healthcare system, the Affordable Health Care Act wasn't perfect. Nobody thought it was, but is trashing it completely the right thing, or is going in, finding what's wrong, and fixing the things that are wrong the right thing? Because in trashing it, you kick 20 to 24 million people off the rolls that, won't get health care any other kind of way because they just don't have the money, and yes, there's some personal responsibility issues when it comes to what you do with your money, but I can't remember the movie, but there was a movie and I say this line all the time from it. There is still some poor folk in the world, because at the end of the day, there are some people that are just poor enough where it's not going to matter how much personal responsibility they have. They just don't have it. If keeping a roof over your head and clothes on your children's back and food in their bellies is the thing that you can afford to do, which gets back, to kind of the religious aspect of the party game question. It's, at a certain point, trying to be altruistic for your fellow man comes with some level of sacrifices that I don't know if the American electorate is willing to do.
This is a semi-interesting thing that I did not know about, and this, I think, maybe speaks to what other countries are doing. It's from The Atlantic in April of this year. So China has taken on cap and trade before the U.S. has taken it on as a nation. India is planning to roll out 100 gigawatts of solar energy, an amount that will dwarf that in the United States. So they're actually the ones who are taking on the technological advancements at this point.
That's exactly what I was...
That's the fear that they'll win.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Is that China and India are actually going to be the way pavers of renewable energy in the next 20 years.
But they have to be because they are so far behind. Because they have heavily polluted for many, many years. Where we already took some things into our hands in the 70s and said, let's bring it on and get it better. You know,
that doesn't mean that they have to, though.
Well, yes, they do, because they are polluting themselves to death.
They also, how much larger is China and India's population than ours?
700.
Which goes back to my population argument.
You know, they're both over 1 billion and we're at 300
But
million.
one big blaring black eye that we've avoided. I don't know if we've consciously avoided talking about this, but the Trump administration, well, and the GOP in general, are huge climate change deniers. We've been talking about...
So we're trying to kill everybody again?
Yes.
You know, we've been trying to kill everybody since 1995.
Yes and no, though, Ben, because when Trump announced that he was pulling out, there are Republicans that came out and said this is wrong to do this.
Yeah, there are.
So
except for the ones who
You can't.
But I do understand your point, though. I don't think America should have ever been a two-party system. The problem with that is you have one party that says, yes, we believe that climate change is a real thing and it needs to be tackled.
Shouldn't be a political issue in the first place.
Right,
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But you have one, then you have the other party who's, you have some individuals that have come out to say, yes, you know, I believe in climate change. But the party line for the GOP is we don't necessarily believe climate change is real. And I think that ultimately, I really do believe that what Trump wanted to do was all of what he's noticed that most politicians do, and that's from the left or the right, is in campaigning they make a lot of promises and they rarely follow through on all of their promises. I think what he wants to do, and it's kind of brilliant, but it's actually kind of insidious, is fulfill the promises he made. So he said he thought it was a bad deal and he was pulling out. He didn't think Obama should have done it, and so whether or not it was the right thing, because it pleases his base, I'm pulling out.
I would make a different argument on this, and this is probably one area where we disagree. I think it is such a new science that I don't think anybody knows. We just think that, you know, global warming is a thing because it's a buzzword. Well, global cooling was a huge buzzword in the 60s. You know, there was
70s, we were heading to an ice age.
By Rachel Carson and all those things.
Well, that's because it was going to be a retroactive.
No. Give me a chance. I think it is such a new science. We're talking about global cycles, and this is an exceptionally new science. So we don't have very accurate records going back very far on. We have guesses, and we have these models that we try to predict in terms, but we have no idea if they're right, wrong, or indifferent. In terms of real hard data, we have about 50 years of it. In terms of what you can say, and it's gone through 2 cycles since.
Coincidentally, since the Industrial Revolution.
No, not at all. I would say the Industrial Revolution started in the 1830s, and we started getting really accurate data on how it was affecting or not affecting climate change in the 1960s. So I would absolutely disagree with that point. My larger point, and why I don't like it, is I just think once you script the world, you script the world. And I don't like pollution in general. I just think it's stupid. So I don't want to live in a polluted world because I think it's gross. Going to Los Angeles in the 80s was filthy. I mean, it's disgusting. Or Denver. It's repulsive. So I don't care. I don't know either way. My argument would just be, I don't know if global warming, cooling, either one's right, wrong, or different. These may just be global cycles. I just don't like pollution. And in my mind, I don't know of any other case where we could imperil ourselves, and literally bring down the destruction of our planet. Possibly. It's a possibility where you would err on the side of just recklessness and say, let's just get rid of the rules or let's not mandate this. Okay. In my mind, I don't know if it's right, wrong, or different on the science level, and I don't think anybody really does because it's too new of a science. But what I would say is, I just don't know why anybody would vote for the side of pollution and the possibility of self-destruction. Yeah. That just seems stupid to me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So with that, we're going to take a break.
Hey, you having a good time? Let me introduce you to a couple of my media brothers. First, www.americathemixtape.com, a cipher on American politics, society, and culture. And where'd I get that mixtape? Of course, www.cornerbodega.us, purveyors of urban culture. Come on, let's get back to the party.
And welcome back. So we've just got one more thing we're going to talk about, and that is today's sugar, honey, iced tea. And of course, that is things that I or a member of the panel have found that are really cool, aka the shit. And this week's sugar, honey, iced tea is the One Love Manchester benefit concert that Arianna Grande helped to organize. It raised $13 million for the Manchester concert attack victims. And of course, in that show, Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Miley, Cyrus, Pharrell Williams, Usher, the Black Eyed Peas, and Coldplay all performed. Actually, kind of wish I was in Manchester to see that show, because that actually sounds like an amazing.
From Coldplay, right?
Purely for Coldplay. Purely for Coldplay. That just sounds like
It's
that
always
would
fun to
have
see
been an
a
amazing time.
guy with a dude named Apple jump around on stage making silly songs. So.
That's very good comments.
Well, the one thing that bothers me here is Coldplay was the only British group.
Why does that bother you?
Like adversity.
Not
I'm
lack
kidding.
of-
I'm kidding.
Yeah, no,
Not
it's
lack of
actually,
diversity.
it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because that's actually, I didn't make much of it, but I definitely thought of that when I saw the lineup of who was playing the show.
Is Katy Perry British?
No, she's
from California.
very California.
Very California.
Oh,
Girls.
I'm thinking of what's her name?
I guess, maybe
I know what's her
maybe
name.
we can give them Bieber.
Lily Allen.
But give them Bieber. I'll give them Bieber.
I was
He's
thinking.
Canadian.
I was thinking of Lily Allen.
I'll give
I
her
haven't heard that
Miley,
name in a
too.
while.
Oh, she's
Actually.
fantastic.
Yeah, no, I love Lily Allen.
I like her better than Carrie.
I hadn't heard that name in a while. Yeah, it was really.
Well, you get people that particular audience would know,
True.
and
Because you guys talking about Ariana Grande's audience.
Man.
But
Manchester
they're
had so
Brit.
many
They're going to
bands
know
come out of
everybody over there. Most of the people that gone that show would have been Brit. They would have
Manchester.
known all the Brit bands.
And if you
that's
go
not
to-
what I mean.
if
I'm
you go
talking
back to
about
the-
they
You're
were
talking about the
targeting
age
age
demographic.
group.
The age demographic. Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't know that I put Coldplay into that, maybe necessarily, but I would say that Manchester has an enormous music scene in and of itself. It would
Well,
have been
and
the
the other thing you have
Yeah,
to think
yeah,
about
at
too
its
is you
time.
don't know who she asked and who declined and who accepted.
Yeah.
There were a lot of
So-
bands who canceled shows right afterwards. It was the little
Oh,
tape, whatever.
yeah.
And
I'm just saying for
like,
her
they started
benefit,
canceling their
yeah.
tours. There were a ton of people that started canceling their tours right afterwards. And so, it's
Yeah,
a
there
little
are
surprising.
some artists that she may have asked that declined.
Yeah,
I think that's just silly.
on other tours.
They may have had a
and-
scheduling conflict, but
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
like you too, if they were
Yeah.
playing in Chicago, I
Yeah.
get that. That's fair. Like you can't not show up to your show at Soldier Field.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
That would be a bad thing. And I
This
just
is something I noticed.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I definitely noticed it, and I didn't make a lot of it, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm sure that there was a ton of acts that either just played, like I was thinking, Drake's tour just wrapped up a couple weeks ago over there, so he's already over here doing stuff. I know he had a show in Toronto yesterday or the day before, and.
It's got to be a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, so I was just thinking.
It was such a short turnaround. It is hard to get people, an entire band back in.
But how did
over
all
there.
these American artists be able to make it? That's a little strange.
Well, I was thinking that
How
this
many
sounds
of
like a
them
bunch
are-
of people who just weren't on tour right
Yeah.
now. It's really, I'm looking
I
like,
mean, there's not an equal amount of British bands that probably aren't on tour.
well, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that there probably could have been more British bands, but
I think that's a little surprising.
You know.
I never even thought about
And
that.
they could have got the Pit Stop Boys.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
It would have been a great time for like the Smiths or somebody.
Yeah.
You know, Boy George, you know.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah, it's
You
about
could have
to-
gone 80s on
Some
it.
British people in there.
But hey, I mean, they were hoping to do another arena, and wound up filling a stadium and for the show. So
Where'd they end up doing it? Was it at O2?
I do not read. Wait a minute. Let me see if because I did print something out here. Let me see if I see quickly scanning. No, it actually does not say
No, it's gotta be somewhere
where.
in Manchester, I would assume.
Yeah. So
Most of the big venues are in London. So.
yeah, I'm sure it was their probably their soccer stadium. That they wound up playing at. But just the fact that at this shorter turnaround, because we're talking a week later, really, or maybe 2 weeks, but I think it was a week later they were able to turn around and pull off a huge
13 days after.
pull off a huge
Listen,
stadium show. I thought that was kind of
all
shit.
the kudos in the world to her for doing it.
Oh, yeah.
For having the balls, for lack of a better word, to get back out there. When,
Yeah.
It was her concert that people got blown
Well,
up
not
at.
only
And
that,
she got her
but
ass
it
back
was
out
the
there.
day
It was
after
tough.
the London attack
Oh
that
yeah.
they went ahead and they still did it.
went ahead and did it anyway.
Britain is not the country I would be pulling this stuff off in.
No.
Well, they had the
That's
same
stiff
stiff
upper
upper
lip
lip
stuff.
that we did with 9/11.
Yeah, true. I mean,
Brits always
Well,
have had a
here's
stiff upper
Liam
lip.
Gallagher and Chris Martin.
They're
Liam
Oasis.
Gallagher was from Oasis.
Oasis, yeah.
Chris
Chris
They
Martin's
should have had
Chris
Oasis.
Coldplay.
Coldplay,
Okay,
yeah.
thank
But
you.
they were too stoned being the world's greatest man.
Oh, so okay. So Liam Gallagher, that's another British person. I'm
Yeah.
about to say. I missed that name. So yeah. So there was at least one other,
That's awesome.
one other British actor.
Hey, congrats to every single person you win. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And even more, congrats to her for putting it together.
And she gave 14,000 free tickets.
Yeah.
To
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Oh yeah, back
so,
to
Still-
back to the
and still
It
got
made
13 million. Yeah.
In American, it was 10 million pounds.
Yeah.
So back to sugar honey iced tea. Another little factoid that I ran across about Billy Joel. So Billy Joel, whenever he runs a concert, obviously at a big venue, you know how whenever there's a concert, the front row tickets, like
Yeah.
usually like uber rich people
Right.
get those tickets. Well, apparently what he does is he keeps those tickets on hold. And he goes finds people in the nosebleeds.
Oh wow.
And gives those tickets to the people who purchased the nosebleeds tickets because he noticed that the people in the front rows weren't his fans. They were just like rich people who wanted to be seen.
Who wanted to be seen or
And they're
just
like, I'm in the Billy Joel concert front row. Look at me.
Yeah.
Drinking cognac or
What an
whatever.
asshole. 'Cause
Yeah.
if I was a fan, the paid for the ticket.
Right.
Dude, I'm a real fan.
Well, yeah, but those-
I'm gonna spend my savings on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
To see the nosebleeds and get picks, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, what he noticed is that almost everybody up there, like they weren't standing up, they weren't cheering, they were just sitting there.
It's like when the Chiefs give away like pizza to a section. I'm like, damn, I'm never in that
I
section.
never in that second. Yeah.
But the sentiment in itself,
Yeah,
I
no,
know,
it's
is
pretty
this shit.
It
as you
is,
say.
yeah, but I say the
sugar honey
sentiment
iced tea.
behind it is the shit. Yeah, aka the sugar honey iced tea.
I'm blown away there's not Elton John on the list. He does all
Yeah,
these
I was
songs.
kind of surprised. That
Really, Elton does that,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, which benefit thing do you not do?
yeah, really.
You're at all.
Yeah. So with that, I think we've hit all the points that I wanted to hit. We've definitely talked about the Manchester concert. We didn't touch as much on the London attack, but like I said earlier, we do want to send a rest in peace to all of the victims there. And we did talk about today's Sugar Honey Iced Tea, which of course gave to the victims of the Manchester attack. And with that, I want to end this. What?
You can edit this out, and we can keep this exceptionally brief.
Yeah.
I thought the tweets from our president to the mayor of London were so wrong. So wrong.
Yeah, and he didn't even quote it correctly.
And it's not like we haven't had attacks here. That really disturbed me. That's a time where you are nothing but supportive, where you pledge your assistance, you reach out to all the victims, you do everything you can to help somebody, and to disparage the mayor of the country, of the city of London through tweets, nonetheless, I just thought was fairly repulsive.
But shout out to the first responding officers of the London attacks. One guy came at one of the first responders, only armed with a baton, tried to take on 3 of them and took stab wounds to the arms and the face. Wow. And then there was another guy who tackled one with his bare hands.
The guy with the baton.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, he died.
And then there was another guy who tackled one with his bare hands before armed response showed up. Wow. So I just want to obviously lend out my thoughts and my support, even though I'm here and I can't do anything.
And not only to the responders in London, but to the first responders. Period. I often think how difficult the job is already, and then to have to go into whatever extra modes you have to find in order to respond to such tragic events. My hat definitely goes off to any of the first responders.
That just makes your heart warm.
All right. And that is the shit.
That's the shit.
And with that, I am going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that's to good times with good people.